Hello! Some of you have seen my new book called The Art of Tapestry Weaving. It was published in November of 2020. It's a comprehensive tapestry techniques book that's meant for people who are brand new to tapestry weaving, and it's also a great resource for people who have been in the field for longer. I've gotten so many great questions from so many of you since the book came out that I wanted to answer a few of them in video form. The question I wanted to tackle today was about using a ball winder. In chapter 2 of the book, I talk about all kinds of different tools that you may or may not need for tapestry weaving, but a ball winder is pretty essential. It's one of these little doohickeys. It might look something like this. There are other ones out there. And it takes the yarn from the form you buy it in and puts it in a different form. So perhaps you have bought yarn in a cone. This is a cone of Harrisville Highland. It comes on some kind of a cardboard tube. And some weavers can, if you're weaving fabric, you could weave straight from the cone. A lot of times in tapestry, that may or may not be efficient for you. You can also buy yarn in skeins or hanks. This is something my editor and I talked about for quite a while when we were writing the book. I've always called these skeins. You often buy knitting yarn this way, and you can buy weaving yarn this way also. In some parts of the world, it's called a hank. I don't think there's a lot of difference between a skein or a hank. So if it looks like a loop of yarn like this that is twisted and put back together again, that's what you have, a skein or a hank. Often yarn is dyed this way. So you may like, this is hand-dyed yarn that I dyed, and I can't use it like this. I have to put it into a ball or a cake. This is the yarn that I've dyed that is now ready for me to work with. So I took the skein and I used a ball winder and I made it into a ball or a cake. I call this a ball. Other people call it a cake. A ball could also be round. A cake is a put up of yarn where you can take the yarn from the center of the ball or from the edge and use it either way. Cakes are usually sort of flat like this, like a cake, but I just call it a ball. Yarn also sometimes comes in tubes. This is Weaver's Bazaar yarn, which now comes on cardboard tubes. And I use it just like this, but you could wind it into balls if you had a reason to do that. The other way I've seen yarn is just in small amounts on little cardboard things. Embroidery yarn comes this way quite a lot, and some of those yarns work well for tapestry. This is Colonial Persian, which used to be called Patternaean. It's actually a different company. It's the same yarn. So that you can get on these little tiny cards. You can also get it, I think, in larger put-ups. So put up is a word that you'll hear, which just means, how does the yarn come? Is it in a cone? Is it on a tube? Is it in a skein? Or is it in a ball? All of those are put-ups. So if you're a user of yarn, it is quite likely that at some point in your career, you will have to take the yarn from one form and put it into another. I'm going to show you today how to use a swift and a ball winder to take this kind of yarn, which is in a skein, and put it into a ball or a cake. Let's go do it. Here's my ball winding setup. I have an umbrella swift, which I talked about in another YouTube video about tools. And I have my ball winder here. The other tool that you may need is called a niddy noddy. This particular tool takes yarn from a cone or other put-up and makes it into a skein. That can be useful for dyeing or scouring or some other reason. So this is the third tool you may well need. We'll cover that elsewhere. What I have here is a skein of Fried, which is a wonderful Norwegian yarn, and I'm going to wind it into a ball by first taking the label off and putting it on my umbrella swift. And a good snap when you get your skein open will help put all of those little yarns together in the right order so they don't get tangled when you wind your ball. This skein is only tied in one place, it looks like. There's one end, and it's helpful if you note where the end is. So it's easy to get the ends lost. And this skein is tied the two ends around a center figure thing. Excuse me. I'm just going to cut this one. This is where the end is. I'm going to put it here just so I can find it in case I need it, and then take this tie off. So here's the end I want to use. It doesn't matter which end you start with. It does help if it's the end that is unwinding from the outside of the skein of yarn. If the end is coming from the inside, it'll be harder to wind and a little more complicated in terms of it might tangle. So make sure that the skein, I don't know if you can see that this skein is not all the way over this umbrella swift. You can pull that over the edge. It's called an umbrella swift because it folds up like an umbrella. There are swifts that don't fold, that are just a big round piece of wood usually. This one folds, which is nice. So I'm going to change the angle of the camera and we'll look more closely at the ball winder. All right, here's the free end of my yarn, and you'll notice that your ball winder has a little loop here. You're going to bring the yarn under and wrap it around until it goes through that loop, and then there's a little notch on the top of your winder. Even if you have a wood winder or one that looks different, there's usually some way to attach the yarn to the very top of the winder. So my trick for winding is to put a small amount of tension on the yarn that's going in. Not a lot. These plastic ball winders have little plastic teeth in them and they break easily. So if you put a lot of tension on this ball winder, it will probably not last you very long. So you want to be gentle with it, but a little bit of tension will make the ball just a little bit firmer. Not so much that you really stretch the yarn, but enough that the ball you're winding is a cohesive thing and not a big loose floppy ball. So again, I'm going to use this turner handle at the back to turn the ball winder. And you noticed when I did that it's popping off the top. Sometimes when I start, you need to get it started like this, and then I can put a little bit of tension here. The swift's job is just to unwind, and the ball winder will make a ball. And if I stop here, you'll see that it makes this beautiful little pattern. Because this is at a diagonal, it's turning it in a way that moves back and forth, and it makes a really pretty pattern as the yarn winds up. If you see that pattern getting disrupted, you've probably got a problem with your ball winder. So the pressure I'm putting on the yarn with this hand is quite light. Here I've let this swift go and it has wrapped around. Okay, so we're back on track. Light pressure, you don't have to put this pressure on the yarn, it just makes a neater ball if you put just a tiny bit. Also, if your skein is not quite as nicely arranged as this one is, your ball will be tighter if you have more issues getting it to unwind. So you just turn and turn and turn. Watch what you're doing. Sometimes things get tangled like that and you need to free it. Or if your ball gets too big, if your skein is too large for the ball winder, you want to watch that too. If the edge of the ball is hitting this little loop, then you've got a problem and you need to cut the yarn and start a new ball. This skein is giving me a little bit of trouble. That is totally normal. Most skeins are not perfect. It's a rare skein that I can unroll the whole thing nice and evenly. If your yarn is fragile, you'll want to be even more careful. because it's a real pain if it continually breaks as you're winding a ball. Also, that means you're stretching the yarn too much, and you don't want to do that. You can damage the yarn. There are also electric ball winders, and those are really nice. I have one from Nancy's Knit Knacks because I wind so many balls that I was getting tendonitis from turning this little crank. So, Nancy's Knit Knacks ball winder with the electric base, if you wind lots and lots of yarn, is a really great thing. The speed at which it winds also can be changed, which is helpful for different kinds of yarn. All right, and there we have the whole skein. So here we have our perfect little ball of yarn. This skein was a 100-gram skein, which is mostly what these winders are made for. It should just fit on your ball winder. So the skein is getting close to this little loop, but it's not touching it yet. Once you get to the end, you're just gonna lift the ball off, and there you have it. The center will sort of fill in, and that makes the ball a little bit looser. And then you can use the yarn from the outside. If you purchased your yarn, you might consider taking that label. This was a skein of Fried, which is a beautiful Norwegian tapestry yarn. And I fold that up and stick it in the middle in case I need to buy this color again, or I just want to know what the brand of the yarn is. I have so much yarn in my house that it's helpful to keep track of what something is, what the fiber content is, where I got it, that kind of thing. All right, that's the ball winder. So thank you so much for joining me for this tiny tutorial on how to use a ball winder. May all of your yarny projects bring you joy. I'll see you soon. One take, people, one take. It's my goal in life, one take.